G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Eno here from Fantasy Take TV. Round 1 is over. We've finally had the start of the season. We were waiting for round 0, and opening round was obviously a bit of a tease, but we had to take something from it, and we've locked in all our teams. We can now start to make the most important moves really of the season, and that's early. So I'll go over my team. Obviously 73k rank after round 1 isn't great, I'll put it that way, but it's obviously not the be all and end all. So you'd obviously like to have scored a bit better and be a bit higher rank to begin with, but I think the crux of our team is pretty good. There's just a few picks that are a bit questionable. We nailed most of the rookies, and then there's a few players that have obviously popped up that we didn't start with that we'll have to assess and look at whether or not we'd bring them into our team this week or next. So 2,059, and I kept a bit of cash in the bank. So we'll reveal what I ended up with team wise for round 1, and I'll talk through a bit of what I went through over the round, because to begin the round, right on that first game, we had obviously Gibcus, who went down with an ACL, sadly enough, and he hasn't really left my team ever for the preseason. I thought he'd do 60, 70, somewhere around there. Hopefully have a few spike games that he showed in his first year of footy, and make some decent cash for us. But obviously, what happened, and right from the get-go, we knew that we'd be down a defender rookie back there to start off with. And also before that game, I brought in Carroll very late, along with JD and Jaws. I think we all just decided, we know he's playing a mid-roll. We sort of, figured out or realised that, even though he does have the bye, this coming week, that could be quite helpful in looping some scores on. I looked more at the buys. There's been a bit of a head spin, this sort of early buy stuff, but thought that could be useful for us this week, using him to, loop those mid rookies that I have to hopefully get one of their spike scores, or get a poor score off the field straight away. Could be beneficial. And then obviously we hope he keeps his role in the coming weeks. Carroll looks very, very good, I think, in sort of last 3 quarters of that game. I think he started off pretty slow, but so we brought him in. A decision I then made sort of during the round after that, obviously we had Dacos, Collingwood Sydney on Friday. I decided to move Dacos to my midfield. So once teams came out and we saw Marty Hall was playing, I thought, let's get Nick out of the defence, put him into the midfield. I think Marty Hall is going to be a good rookie. I sort of analysed D's team as best I could, thinking that McDonald came in for Tomlinson, was going to play defence, and that Marty Hall, essentially in that, that made me more confident in his job security, that he was just actually replacing Bowie and not, at risk of maybe Tomlinson coming back in if they want to go back that way in a couple of weeks and losing his role or his spot in the team altogether. So that gave me enough confidence to pick Marty. We knew he'd score pretty decently. I think he started slow in that game and then worked into it. I think he scored most of his points in the last 3 quarters again, a bit similar to Carroll. But what that did allow me to do was, knowing that Gibcus is, he's an ACL, he's out for the season, and whilst you don't have to trade him straight away, this can help me put Nick back into defence the following week, which is what I'll do, and then have I could still trade Gibcus to a defender rookie if one did happen to pop up that I really wanted, or have the flexibility to go Nick back into the defence, either get a mid rookie if I want, or I could put one of the forward mids in my forward line and get a forward rookie if I wanted. So that was my line of thinking. We took Nick's VC, and then that was from that. So we fielded Roberts that game. We started Heaney. He was unbelievable. Jordan worked into it, so that was really good as well. But we did put Grundy on the bench and have the emergency on him. So I just last minute thought I'd do that on all formats. It actually was pretty beneficial in fantasy and Dream Team to have done that. I think he only had about 50. But 71 in SuperCoach was sort of that, is it good enough to take or is it not? And at this point, I hadn't fully decided whether Jackson was going to be in my team or not. And we'll get to that in a bit. But it was an option, right? I could see what Cadman got, see what I was deciding, Cadman or Dempsey as the emergency. Obviously got that wrong would have got an extra 24 points there. But obviously, Cadman beat him by 1 point. We take the little wins. We get an extra point out of that, and I did end up going with Jackson, but I will explain that further later on. So that was a few of the late changes I made, as far as my team goes. And then the last one was that last decision with Jackson, but it was also related to Nick Martin. I was, heading to that game. I was sitting here at my desk, actually. I was going out later in the day, and I was going to watch that first half. Going to see, first of all, I wanted to see who the sub was, and when it ended up being Finn McGuinness, and he was not in the 22. That wasn't my whole decision on whether I do start with Nick Martin or not. I still did have my slight doubts, and look, he played a poor first game in the role at AFL level. But I still think he can be a successful pick. It's more whether or not, and I did have this view, early on I was like, I'm picking him. He's going to play this role. He'll get defender status at some point. But as we got closer to the season and round one, I started to think, is it just better to hold off on this guy and see if he can do it? He shouldn't go too nuts in it. And if he does look like being a top 6 defender, then hey, look, if I have to pay a bit more later on, at least I'm confident he can perform and he can do it, and we'll get him later on. Not an absolute must start, but I think I went back and forth a lot. I was going from Butters to Jackson, getting rid of Nick Martin. So what I ended up doing was starting Nick Martin and then having a late decision to go once Cadman scored. I'm like, I'll go Jackson. Anyway, I wanted another sort of forward, and he's, between him and Flanders, he was the one that doesn't have a bye, and we'll just sort of ride him until the ship sinks there, and then he'll probably become Flanders at some point. But I did end up starting Nick Martin, so I sort of floated that, basically Nick Martin to Butters is exactly the cash I have in the bank, and I opted to, it was also in partnership with Butters, the news of him, well, not news, we knew it, that he had a few ankle issues in the preseason, albeit very, very minor. He looked pretty free out there on Sunday. I could have started him anyway and not floated any cash, but as the week went on and we saw Massimo go really well in that same game, it just came to the point where I was like, I'm just going to keep this cash in the bank. I think it's actually quite a year, or a good year where you can, especially with not every team lining up to when they're going to rise. We've got 6 teams this week with players that are all changing price, and then next week we've got the other 10, it'll be 12 with those other 2 teams off their bye. So it's just a different season. Cash in the bank, I think, was going to be handy for me. So I opted to stay with it, get Jackson, and then I didn't use it anywhere else. At that point, I could have maybe gone Ollie Wines up to Butters or Rosie or something, but I stuck fat, kept the cash in the bank, and then, we'll get to later what I think I might be able to do with it this coming week or next. So that's sort of just a quick rundown of my thinking across the weekend as the games unfolded. I did manage to watch most. So as I said, I watched probably the first 2 or 3 quarters of the Essendon Hawthorn. Then on that Saturday, I didn't catch much of the North Giants game, pretty much at all. And then I got home later on and watched maybe the second half of sort of both the other games. The Adelaide Gold Coast one was sort of over by then. So I tuned into a bit of the Saints Geelong one. And then Sunday pretty much just sat on the couch and tuned in and out of the footy for the most part. So did manage to catch most of it. We'll talk now just through the players I've got and what my thoughts are. Have a look at some quick trades that I'm thinking of, and then we'll further discuss some players with the boys later on in the podcast. So Stewart, I think by the time I started watching, he was on about 60, and to be honest, he just sleptwalked the rest of those 40 odd points to ton up. So look, you're never too stressed about him. Will he be worth the price we paid for him at whatever he averaged or what he's priced at about 114 or whatever that is he did last year? Maybe not, but I guess people's question mark will be, is Max Holmes maybe going to detract away from him a bit? But from what I saw, and maybe it changed in the second half, because I know Maxi Holmes started off like a house on fire in the first half from just having a look at his score. Stewart's role is Stewart's role, and no one can take that away from him, and obviously they're never going to. He's the interceptor. He takes most of the kick-ins, and he's really that just switch kick deep in defence outlet guy that when I saw Maxi Holmes, he didn't really venture too deep in defence and steal any of that ball per se. Maxi, brilliant player, looks like he's, could be anything. Sort of roams around between the arcs, and he's the link player, right? Between, Stewart will be often kicking to Max Holmes, and he's the one that's taking the game on, whether it's hitting an inside kick or, using his leg speed to then get it inside 50. It's sort of, I don't think Max Holmes is going to totally detract away from Stewart. So that's my thoughts on that. I guess the usual culprits are the ones that are, and that's just your Duncans and your Tuies that get down there every now and again and steal a kick in or something. So, we'll move on with Stewart. We're happy. I'm happy with him thus far, and we'll ride him until he possibly gets injured or misses a game. Which, fingers crossed, that doesn't happen, and we get full 23 out of him. She's didn't really get to watch too much of this. If any, but I caught maybe a bit of the highlights, a bit of the KO mini. He just looked unbelievable. It is quite sad that he's in quite a lot of teams because it wasn't the case a month or so ago. But I think for good reason he's in a lot of teams because he's just ridiculous. I don't really care where he's going to play as long as it's not deep forward because he will just score points wherever he is on the ground. Just plays. I did catch him looking at some highlights just at the back of stoppage, really just pushing up, being that quarterback. Even took some intercepts, some really good marks. So, great start from Shees. Hayden Young, I did watch this full game. Was very frustrating, of course. I'm sure if you do own him and was watching, but he just had one of those stinkers of started the game with a free against, gave away a 50. He started, in the negatives. I think he got himself up to 15 and then he went back down to 0 pretty quickly with those couple of acts, but just continued to butcher it. Couple unfortunate clangers, but a couple really poor kicks as well, and that's just not like him. We know how much of a beautiful left boot he is. He tackled the house down, had about 10 11 tackles, so I do like the role. But the one thing is with Freo, who I do own a couple players from, is they just got decimated. They lost 2 talls, one a key back, one a key forward. Lost another sort of medium back in Carl Warner, who looked really good in his role up until 3/4 or whatever it was that he got heavily knocked out, which was sad to see. So hopefully he's not out for too long. But so Hayden Young had to go back and cover him in the last quarter for a bit. And they were sort of just seeing the game out. So it'll be very interesting to see Freo's team sheet this week, especially since I own 2 players that are probably susceptible to a position move depending which way they go. Young may go back and they bring in a midfielder like Brody or, O'Meara's back or just one of the younger kids in there. Or Jackson who could go back to playing more of a forward role. They could bring in a ruckman because of the talls they've lost. Interesting to see. So that could be bad for us. We'll have to wait and see on Thursday how the team sheets go. Good thing is they're one of the Saturday games, so we'll find out straight away. But that's something to look at. Williams, I'm not totally attached to this pick. I think he has the potential to score well. It's just more of a fact, will it happen early on or will it take him a little bit to build his match fitness and get into the season? He's got a rest now, which hopefully that does him well. That was maybe something that could have come up if he didn't have this bye, that he just could miss a game or get a rest or managed 1 week. But obviously this bye is a forced one, so hopefully that does him pretty well for the next couple of games, and we'll monitor him next week most likely. See how he looks. Zach Reid, pretty disappointing and unfortunate again, just like Gibcus, but just 2 guys that have had some injury issues. And whilst Gibcus is pretty unpredictable, Reid's is sort of just a recurring thing that he's had. I know he's had a pretty good preseason. I think he may have missed a couple of sessions there was reports of, but picked for round 1. You wouldn't do that if he wasn't fit otherwise, and an issue's popped up again. So I think, obviously, Gibcus is more of a priority trade out. We know he's out for the year, but Reid can also, I would say, be traded out unless you sort of have no one to go to, or you're someone with like an extra defender rookie than me and there's just no one really worth going to. You can sit him on the bench probably for a couple of weeks and just see if anyone pops up. Marty Hall, we spoke about him before, obviously brought him in, confident enough to field him. I think he stays in that team. He sort of worked into it, first AFL game in a couple of years, I believe. did a couple of knees and missed a few years, but we know how good he was back in the day. His VFL stats over the last couple of years are ridiculous. I think he averaged, over a ton in fantasy both those seasons. So, look, obviously not going to get as good of a role he was getting down there, but enough to definitely be a worthwhile rookie for us and fieldable, which is nice. Howes looks a really good player. Has had 2 pretty good games for Melbourne. He does get involved. He mops up. He's good at ground levels too for a decent for a bigger guy. So. Like what I see from Howes. I mean, he's going to be on field for us this week, but I think most weeks he should be. So, yeah, really like what I saw from him. Bont, looking good in the first half. We obviously paid up quite a lot. I didn't actually mention that was another thing I was thinking of on the Sunday before I sat down and watched the games was, now that I've sort of stuck with Martin and Wines, do I go Bont back down to someone like a Butters that I was still pretty keen on, or a Rosie, and bank an extra 100k that I could possibly put towards my team in other spots that could be useful, and I just decided against it. And that first half I was thinking, thank God I did, but Bont did look sort of gassed in the second half. The Dogs were pretty woeful in their attack on the footy, their defence, like running, spread, they just really just were poor. I mean, to allow Jack Billings to get 15 marks along the boundary line, like, did they just not want to mark anyone throughout that whole game? I think it was 140 marks the D's took. I might be wrong, but it was around that, which is just ridiculous. So, look, Bont probably lucky to get a 126. We'll take it, of course. He has the Gold Coast this week, which he does quite well against historically, and then West Coast in round 3, as we know. So, look, still going to be happy having the Bont, of course, and I still, if I was to put my money on it, maybe not as confident to say M1 this year, but maybe M2, M3, at least top 3, I would say. He's still in the prime of his career, so as long as there's no niggles or injuries that he's carrying, I don't see why he couldn't do that, but the Dogs just do disappoint you, which we can also get to a little bit. Takos we spoke about. Dogs, Pies, just, look, no one scores points in that team. He's going to sleepwalk to a 120, 130 most weeks, I would believe, and be pretty comfortably, maybe not comfortably as we thought it would be before the season, be D1, but I still think he will pretty comfortably in the end. Tommy Green, big time performance from him. Funnily enough, I was umming and ahhing about the VC, as I think most of us do every week, but went for Nick to just sort of follow the crowd and get it done early in the round. But Tom Green into I think I had Bont was my original plan, and obviously we lost a bit of a few points with Tommy going huge, but I think he just got almost the best role in the comp. Besides, I don't even want to mention him, Luke Ryan. And that might actually change his role, obviously, with their injuries. But, look, Tom Green is literally 95% midfield. I mean, he's 100% midfield, but he spends 90% of the time on the ground. I mean, his tank is built to an elite level. He's in and under. He's got a good outside game now. He kicks goals. I mean, what the hell is there not to... Like, they're the best team in the comp. You could probably put stake your claim on right now. So... And it wouldn't be very much of a hot take, but yeah, I just gonna love owning Tommy Green this year. He had a good year last year, but he just looks like he's gonna go up a notch this year. So yeah, love owning him. Obviously the buy's a bit annoying, but I'm sure he's already in 45-50% of teams. If he didn't have the buy, he'd almost be as highly owned as Dacos. I'd think so. Yeah, love Tommy Green. Nick Martin. Yeah, one I really, really was tempted to fade, and as I said, he was actually out of my team, back in, back out, and then back in probably an hour before the game, and I obviously watching what was happening in the first half, 3 quarters was quite annoying once you were so close to making that decision, and then look, it's a 1-week score, of course. Has a really good role, but I'm not sure he has the capabilities, and that sounds bad. I think he is usually a very good user by foot, but it's in a different position of the ground where you have to make more decisions. Really, I mean, I don't think maybe enough people give it credit to when you're in the back half of the ground and everyone's in front of you, you have more decisions to make. You have more, barriers, more people in your way. If people aren't moving or leading in the right directions, it actually can, and that's what makes the good ball users out of the back half really good ball users. I don't think it's just go back there and anyone can collect 30 touches. I mean, they probably can, but are you using them actually efficiently? And I think just too many times he tried to manufacture something that wasn't there, and that could just be first game AFL in the role. But I think the more I talk to George and his reading of Nick Martin, he wasn't just saying this post this game either. George was saying it to me throughout the preseason that a lot of Essendon track watchers were saying, Nico looks really good running on top of the ground. He's fit as a fiddle. He's getting a lot of the ball, but he turns it over a hell of a lot. And it just seems that maybe it might take him some time to fully settle in that role and maybe even not just his fault, the whole team around him, to gel with him now playing this role. He was almost All-Australian winger last year. Like, he played such a blinder of a season. It was so damaging, running into 50, kicking goals, hitting up targets. So I don't think he truly is a terrible kick. He just maybe had some nerves. First AFL game in the role, you're getting a lot of the footy and it's just not working. He might have lost some of his confidence. So, look, he's not like a must-trade. I think you can definitely give him another chance. I think a lot of people will, but I'm not going to begrudge anyone that does trade him. And it is something that I am tempted to do now because there's just a lot of mids that are really good value, and he's taking up one of those spots, and it's early in the season. You want to be making money. You want to be having really good scorers, especially in the midfield slots, because it's best 18 for the next 4 out of 5 weeks. And if you're not getting good scores from mids who, historically they're the best scorers on the ground, it's going to cost you some ranks. So we'll talk about him later when we get to some trades and some possibilities that I can do. But that's just probably my overall thoughts on Nico watching that whole game. So let me know what you think about him, what you're going to do in the comments. It's probably a big talking point this week, and I'm sure we'll talk about it on the podcast. So Ollie Wines, now, look, probably the easiest 94 someone will ever score, to be honest. I don't think I saw that man have any more than 5 sprint efforts, and that might be a bit harsh, but he didn't need to. That ball was just pinging around. It was a bit of a hot day. They did rotate a few more through the midfield. Even Butters and Rosie's time, mid-time was quite down. They spent a bit of time forward. They got Haunt Francis in there quite a lot. And they got Mead in there quite a lot too, or, at least a decent chunk, which did took off the bottom of those other 3 guys in Wines, Butters and Rosie. They just sort of spent a bit more time on the bench or down forward, rested a bit more. Hot day against West Coast, they were pumping him anyway. They really should have beaten him by probably 100 points, but I'm not throwing the toys out of the cot just yet with Wines. A bit early and premature. If I wanted to trade someone out of Martin and Wines, it would definitely be Martin. And that's funny, some people might say that one's could be a keeper and one's not, but I still believe in Wines' ability to post some decent scores, especially with their run over the next month or so. And I just want to see it again. They play us this week at the G. It's going to be a colder afternoon. I think that's where, there are more conditions that Ollie can thrive in. And I just want to actually get another look at their midfield, and if that was just more of a, did Ken just treat it more of like a preseason game with their mid rotations, knowing that let's not burn it. Butter's coming off a little ankle roll. Rosie is probably on top of the ground, but what do we need to really pump big mid minutes into our guys round 1 of the season in a game that should be a pretty easy kill? Let's just see if that theory is true and get another look this week. So that's where I sit with Wines. I thought he just did some in and under work, didn't really spread too much, and unfortunately was probably one of the only 4 players in the Port team that didn't kick a goal. So look, we'll definitely keep him for another week and see how he goes. McKercher, really good. Didn't catch the game, as I said, but I went back and watched some of his touches, which if you ever want to know, you can do that on the AFL app. Just search one of your players up in the stats section, and you can just press watch extended highlights, and you see every sort of pretty much all their acts and all their point scoring. So he had a little bit of a Cook session, kick to kick. I think late in the first quarter, early second a bit as well. So I never wanted to bench him. That was part of also my reasoning with what doing Jackson allowed me to. I was, able to field McKercher, which didn't get me a hell of a lot of points. Especially if I fielded Dempsey down forward instead of Cadman. But he's got to be locked onto your field every week. Now, if this is a possibility, I think some tons will definitely come. So. I think they're under the roof at Marvel for the next 2 rounds, I believe. So that could be really, really good. Sanders, Bevo, really disappointing. I actually can't believe that he did that. Maybe Sanders was coming into the game with some niggles. Maybe his tank's not there, but I refuse to believe all of that. I mean, the amount of praise he's given this kid, we just saw him play most of the game and rack up 30 touches in the last preseason game, I think he said post game it wasn't due to his couple of clanger kicks that he did unfortunately have, sort of in the third quarter, that might cost. I know at least one of them cost him a goal. What sort of confidence does it give a kid, especially a hype draft pick like that, highly talented kid, in your first game to say, yeah, mate, no, you're not doing it for me. Let's sub you off instead of James Harms, Latham Vandermeer, Lockie McNeil, who was literally turning every single touch into shit. Just not quite sure that was the way to go about it, but hey, Bevo is Bevo. And yeah, is his time up at the Dogs? I don't know. So we'll have to monitor that though. That's obviously a point of interest because do we want him on the field if he's a sub risk? Obviously not. So I think we give it another go this week. I'll be out of loop, which we'll get to later. Matty Roberts, pretty nice, just 69, worked into it again. And a lot of these rookies worked into it and had quiet first quarters, but then really came on as the game went on. So okay, that's good signs for a lot of them. And hopefully, I think he did spend a bit of time on the wing. Hopefully that's not every week, but I think I want him on field most weeks as well in this role. I think he did some good defensive efforts as well, a few spoils. So that's the stuff you want to see. I know it doesn't get the biggest SuperCoach points, but as long as he's doing that stuff, he's more of a chance of staying in the team and staying in that role going forward. You don't just want to be an absolute gull and not do any defending or any of that because, you can find yourself out of the team. So, no, we like Matty Roberts. Wilson kicked a couple of goals. Didn't notice a hell of a lot of him when I was watching, but he did pop up with that nice goal late in the fourth. I think he'll have some big games, but he's obviously playing a position and role that can warrant some poor ones, but, 66, that's nice. So, we'll see if he gets on the field any point soon, but I think he's going to make quite a bit of money. Wilson, Carroll we spoke about pretty much. Clark, I didn't really see him at all. I know he got subbed eventually, but the time I was watching, so, probably more of it happened. So I know he had quite a few clangers in the first half, so, I think his attack on the footy a couple of times is good from what I saw, but I guess the disposal in his first game wasn't too great. So just wonder if they give him another chance. Maybe do they relegate him to the sub? I'm not sure. So we'll definitely obviously keep an eye on that. But there are some other rookies that could be a possibility. Rowan, you might see, you will have seen by now that Gawn isn't in my team, and the rucks do. I always like having a bit of a play around in the rucks, as you know. So I started with Shrek and Gawn early in the preseason. Shrek obviously got injured, so we know what happened there. Then I went Shrek to Rowan, and that would have been absolute perfect setup. But of course, Grundy went berserk in the opening round and posted a score that, at his price, you really couldn't pass up. And obviously I made the call of, wow, Gawn just had the 7. I'm never going to sit here and say Max Gawn is an absolute star because I think he's probably the best ruckman I've ever seen. Besides Cox, who when I was 12, 13, 14 years old was killing it. I think Maxi Gawn is probably the best ruckman I've ever seen, and that's probably not much up for much debate. But at his age, I thought maybe he's the one to cull off a 70 in opening round. Rowan's in the prime of his career. We know what can happen. Gawn, solo ruck, mate. He can go 160, 200 at any time in any game. and English, he's sort of always done pretty decently well against. So I was fully expecting that. To be perfectly honest, I was fully expecting that. But what I wasn't expecting, maybe I was Grundy to have as poor of a game as he did. 50 Dream Team, like I said. 70 SuperCoach. I know he had a lot of clangers, so it could have been a bit better of a score. But to me, that absolute smokescreen of last week of Gawn, who we find out was a bit ill, fading out in the second half and letting Grundy score about 100 points, SuperCoach points in the second half, has really stuffed me, because I would have had the perfect setup of Rowan and Gawn and be absolutely loving life. So it is a point of contention whether we change that back now, which we can look at, or do we just ride Grundy out for a bit longer, see how Maxi goes, and if Maxi posts another big score, then it's probably time to make the switch. But the ruck line's interesting this year. Briggs was very poor. English obviously got a decent score in the end, but he's such a high price, he's going to absolutely plummet. Copped a bit of a knock and spent a bit more time forward. The ones I'm missing, Cherry was good. If you started him, you'd be happy with that. But yeah, not too sure where it's going to end up. I'm very happy with Rowan. I think Rowan can easily be a top 2 ruck, top 3. But do you get Gawn in if you don't have him now? It is a question. But I truly don't believe Grundy will be anywhere near top 3 ruck. And is he enough value, or is he going to even make enough money to be worth it up until the buy? That you hold on to him for that long. With this 70 now, if he goes 100 the next few weeks, he's making money, but he's not making a hell of a lot. That West Coast matchup does obviously really suit, and Sydney as a whole obviously have a really soft schedule the next few weeks. Goldstein isn't a pushover these days. Maybe they even bring in Draper after a game in the VFL and give him a double ruck setup. Nank's pretty good in there. He's going to compete. And then West Coast, obviously, we know is an easy kill, but it's then his buys after that. So do you want to hold him after that if he has a good score to actually reap the rewards of some more cash out of him? And Wits and then Hawks are tough for rucks too. I'm just not sure. So look, we'll give him probably one more week. But we'll get to that when we get to the trades. Jackson, so yeah, we started him, moved him to the ruck line. We got an extra point out of the bit of loophole magic there that is quite hilarious, I can't lie. Doing something like that in round 1, but hey, you take every point you can get, and don't say you wouldn't do the same. Isaac, what can I say? That was absolutely unbelievable to watch. If you haven't seen George's tweet of the old Isaac Heaney bingo, then you should check it out, because that was hilarious. Look, I think I've said my point with him somewhere in a video or on the podcast. He's not going anywhere from the midfield for the next few weeks. What I do want to see is once the bye happens, I will hold him through the bye, and I will see this game against Gold Coast. I expect Parker to be back from his broken arm. Adams, Sydney are absolutely flying right now. I don't even expect Adams, well, my personal opinion, that he should come into the team. Whether that happens or not is another question. I probably think it still does. This Gold Coast game, let's see, at the SCG, if they're both back, let's see what happens with his role, and then we'll make a decision then. He should be coming off, hopefully, a pretty decent score against West Coast. He's got already such a low break even now at like minus 12, and then next week, if he does well this week, it's going to be what's he going to go up 47k this week, and then still be relatively low. That's only with a 90, by the way. So he's just a monitor. So I think he definitely has scope to be a season keeper, top 6 forward quite easily. He's done 95 in the past with not much mid-time. So it's more of what the forward landscape ends up looking like overall. But, there might become a point where post-buy he hits like 580k and he's pushing, and then if a poor score comes and the roll isn't good, do you jump off then? Or do you back him in? Are you going to take a bit as a price hit, and then he keeps producing poor scores? It's going to be a watch and see. And it sort of always has been with Heaney, but I think once the first round of DPPs come, it doesn't look like, I mean, it's only been one round, anyone big is coming that's going to really shake it up. I think he could be a season keeper quite easily. I mean, we know what's going to happen with Jackson. I mean, he might even have to play less ruck time and more forward just this coming week, and Shrek's not even back yet. So we know what's happening with him. I think Flanders is probably the one I'd be still putting a bet on easily to be F1. But who's the rest of them? You know, Fisher was poor, who we can talk about now. Some said maybe he's a keeper at the end. You know, a lot of people were counting him as keepers, and it's been 1 week. I had to go back and watch what went on with this guy because I saw him had a lot of touches and he was just going backwards. He is... I mean, I actually have belief in Nick Martin that he can, become a keeper, get DPP status and be, a season keeper and average 95 to 100 is probably where I'd peg him at if he comes into the role. Zach Fisher, he just can't play. He cannot play. And I knew this. Oh. I mean, I watched him play Richmond every year for Carlton, and he might have had one good patch here and there in a game, but when there's any ounce of pressure on, and I was even not seeing no pressure kicks in this game, and he was still lacing out orange and grey jerseys like he just moved clubs again during that day. Look, first round, do have to give everyone a bit of a pass, but there's a lot of cash to be made and a lot of good picks doing that, scoring well, even for cheaper prices. If he's your only avenue, I think he's one that you can sacrifice. And look, the backline setup. Look, go to rupture his Achilles. So probably Luke McDonald. Speaking to North fans, is probably what he'll just come back in if he's up to match fitness. They sort of used, I think, that excuse maybe last week as to why he didn't play. But now they have a reason. Goda, unfortunately, another big injury, probably out for the season or will be. So we've had a lot so far. It's quite disappointing and sad to see. But so the Fishers will probably survive. I said it with Colby. They do get the next 2 games under the roof at Marvel, I believe, against Freo, then Carlton. He could bounce back, for sure. He's got a disgustingly shit role. It's just going to produce points if you can perform in it. And that's what I couldn't stress enough with Nick Martin. It's all well and good having this role. If any bit of pressure is put on you or you have no target to go to and you still try to hit some stupid kick across your body and you don't have the skill level to do it, you are going to turn it over every single time. And that's what both those guys did. I mean, there was points where Zach Fisher wasn't even kicking drop punts. And even Nick Martin had a few. But I do believe Nick Martin is a much better kick than Zach Fisher, or he is. Not much, but is. A bit frustrated, you could probably tell. But I was more scared of not picking Zach Fisher than Nick Martin. More ownership-wise, more, 100k cheaper forward line options. So I'm not going to beat myself too much about picking Zach Fisher. We know how poor North are probably going to be for most of the year, even if they do improve. There should be a lot of ball down there, but there's just, as I said, a lot of options that are presenting themselves, and if you need money from somewhere, these are the 2 that I wouldn't hate it coming from. Jordan, really good, worked into the game again pretty nicely. You don't notice him that much, but he'll pop up with a tackle, he'll pop up with a ground ball, contested ball, get and handball to a teammate that's, some decent points every now and then. He runs all day, gets to every contest. So, I really do like Jordan. I think in this run that's coming up for Sydney, he'll be really good. Harley Reid was awesome, especially that first 5-10 minutes, and then unfortunately spent a bit of time on the bench here and there, spent a bit of time, even when he did come on, he was forward a bit. So, look, they told us this, they're going to manage him a bit. Hopefully it's only for a few weeks and he gets some more, more time on ground and in the midfield, where he did look really dynamic at times. He broke away from a few centre bounces. He just obviously went missing a bit in the game, and look, they're getting pumped pretty much every week, so you can expect that. But no, I'm taking that score from him. That was really good. I was impressed. Sexton didn't catch the game really at all, but to get 63 in an absolute wet slop from a halfback is probably good. Probably take that. So still happy to have Sexton on field pretty much every week. And then took the loop there with Cadman, as I said before. Saw his highlights. He probably scored most of his points from a couple of pack mark goals. I think he had a bit of ruck time too. I was looking at the ruck contest, about 15-20%. So that's good. That's up a little bit. And maybe due to Briggsy not being too good, or maybe it came late in the game. Not sure. But we like that from Catters, and then he obviously gets West Coast this week. And Ollie Dempsey, probably the pick of the round, really. I mean, all these big guns, you expect to go really big guns for you, or you at least hope to, most of the time. But for Ollie Dempsey to get a 96 for us first up, be a must-have rookie that we've already got in our team, don't have to use a trade on, is really nice. Especially copping Gibcus and Reed that are probably going to have to go. Maybe even Jai Clark at some point. To have Dempsey and just one that you don't have to get in this week or next is really nice. So probably spoke for the longest I ever have on a review, but it is obviously round one. So let's just quickly look at some trades that I can toy with for this week. Let's cancel that and just set the team up. How it looks. Sure you guys are experiencing this with the website these days, but obviously early season. So Jackson to the forward line, Grundy on, Williams off. So yeah, Howes and Hall will be on field for me this week, and then I'll put Gibcus on, but he's obviously the one that will trade. Everyone's playing here. We'll talk about captains later, and then you got some decisions to make down here because these guys are scoring quite well. But we'll have a look at some trades. So I think the first one I'll just lock in that someone that is definitely going out and someone that is definitely coming in for me, and that's Gibcus obviously going out, and it's Jack Billings most definitely coming in. And now the DPP I have to use there is either a Reed or a Jordan, whatever. Obviously, Darcy Wilson's in my midfield. So, look, this isn't going to happen every week for Billings, of course. The Dogs just let him do whatever he wanted out in the wing. He took 15 bloody marks. But the score is now in his system, and he has a break-even of 5. We knew he got that 11 the week before as sub, but now he's got this 119 in his system. His break-even's 5. If he goes, what have they got him at, 60 for the next few weeks? He's going to make 70, 80k, but I think there's obviously scope for him to go more. He's gone 85, 90, 95 in a lot of his previous years, playing sort of wing half forward at St Kilda. So I think there is definitely a possibility for him to get up to about 400k. There's probably a few tougher games coming up here. Another game on the G is nice if he can replicate what he did last week against the Dogs. But obviously a couple of games Adelaide Oval away. Maybe we hold him down here till Richmond. It's probably an easy one for him. I just believe in his scoring ability, and he obviously has this really good score in his cycle now. So he's one that I want to bring in. Now next is, do I sit on that? Leave it as is, VC Nick on the Thursday night, and then captain whatever Tommy Green last game of the round, or do I make some more trades? Now, the conservative SuperCoacher, what you would do for years and years gone past, would probably just do that and sit. You could trade Zach Reed. I think he's confirmed to be out for a few weeks. Or the problem is there's only Caulfield, Pink, someone like that, Charlie Dean. Do I think they're going to be amazing rookies? Not really. I can wait another week on someone like a Caulfield too. Or do I just pull the trigger? Pull the trigger and go Zach Fisher, boost, Nick Martin. Once it loads, get the hell out of my team and just do a really aggressive play. Sarong looked unbelievable yesterday, and not against a chump team either in Brisbane, although they did play pretty poor. And get in someone like a Sarong and then a Fife, who had quite a lot of mid-time. Someone I was always umming and ahhing about in pre-season, but just went more towards your Fishers. I did like Jordan more than Fife, and then Billings obviously was sub round 1, and we couldn't start. Is that on the table? Is it not Nick Martin? Because I do probably believe in Nick Martin more than Fisher. And then do we do something like a Grundy and get a Max Gawn? There's two things there. I mean, look, the boosting part of it, I think it's fine. But is the boost here worth it enough to do this so early in the season? I'm not quite sure. So that's probably something I'll ponder over for the week. See team sheets. I mean, I'm going to have to look at Freo's team sheet in relation to, Young I'm happy to hold for a bit, but especially Jackson. If they bring in a ruckman and he might spend more time forward, it's not the worst matchup in the world to be playing North. We just saw what Hogan did to him. But they're really my sort of sore points. The other thing is, I could just do a simple trade of my worst rookie, right? And look, it can't be Reed because I don't have any more DPPs to go down there. Let's say Clark gets dropped or is sub or something like that. Do we get Clark, put Jordan in the midfield, which I hate. All my DPPs are up there now. And get Tom Berry. Another moneymaker in that's going to absolutely skyrocket, at least for the next week, no matter what he does. But really leaves my forward line with not much, going on. 104 last week, playing a precious small forward role for the Suns. And for Dimmer, I've done a bit of reading about him actually already. They really like him there. They really, really like him there. The problem is that role is really not conducive to good scores. But he has played really, really well the first 2 weeks. And he's 160k with a negative 75 break even. So it makes it a bit tough because, look, all he has to do is score 50 for 2 weeks and he's, bang, made 100k like that. But he's a player that is definitely susceptible to scores like 22, like 10. And look, I haven't looked if there's a sub games. I'm sure a couple are. But, is that even possible? He was out of favour, I believe, for pretty much all of last year. I'd assume these are mostly full games. Maybe the 5's a sub, the negative 4's a sub game. I'd hope. You can look at minutes played, can't you? 40 minutes for a negative 4. That's not great. 38 minutes for a 5. So that's probably him coming on late in the game that's sort of done and dusted. But, in 100 minutes, in 96 minutes, 76, he can score 40s and 50s. It doesn't really seem that appealing. I get it. But the 100 is in his system. That's the only thing. If he scored another 80, 60, 70, whatever, I would probably look at him. But this 100 is in his system. And if he can back it up with a 60 or a 70 the next week, and then another decent score, the following, he's going to make quite a bit of cash very, very quickly. So that's another one to ponder over. Then you sort of just, have pretty much every decent rookie already. Like I said, I've already got Dempsey, Cadman, Wilson, Carroll, Howes. Hall is going to be, due to the lack of defender rookies, close to a must-have as you can. Kirch, Sanders a bit disappointing with the sub out, but good. Roberts. Got Billings, who I think is close to a must-have rookie. Sexton, everyone has. So there's not really anyone I'd be missing at this point besides someone like a Jeremy Sharp, who, again, can wait a week on. Isn't a must-have this week. Probably wouldn't see my field. And we can just gather some more information. So, absolutely everyone besides Jesse Hogan, who I'm not getting in, mind you, before, one game before a bye. But pretty much got everyone there that, you'd want to have. So Massimo's the other one there that we'll speak about. I've spoken for way too long on this video on the pod, but that's some thoughts with the team. Let me know how you went, some thoughts that you're thinking about for trades this week, and we'll see you next time. Pulling out the coupe at the light.